Okay, this is a video response to Nicholas Vaughn 123. It was like a text. It was like something like on a little piece of paper. It was saying, "Why do you think that Sega Genesis beat Super Nintendo in the console war?" I never said that at all. I just said that I was more of a Sega Genesis fan growing up than a Super Nintendo fan because I played the Sega a bit more because I had the Sega longer than the Super Nintendo, even though I like both systems. But statistically wise, Super Nintendo beat Sega Genesis because if you look at the statistics, Super Nintendo I think sold around 50 million units while the Sega Genesis sold around 30 million units. You know what I'm saying? But for a while in the early to mid 90s, it was just pretty much a stalemate. You know, it was pretty much like neck and neck. You know, I mean, like if Super Nintendo was winning, they were only winning slight. But the reason why, like, I was more of a Sega fan in my earlier days because at first I had the NES system. I had the NES. That was like the first system I owned personally, you know. And then from there, I bought a Sega Genesis in the early 90s. I bought a Sega Genesis around 91 or so. And then I pretty much had a Sega Genesis system from like 91. Like I still have my Sega Genesis system. I pretty much played it from like 91 to like 94. In 1994, I got my Super Nintendo, and that's when I started playing like a lot of the RPGs like Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy 2, Chrono Trigger, Super Mario World, Super Mario RPG, those systems, those games. You know, I never said that it beat Super Nintendo. You know, Super Nintendo beat Sega Genesis because of the third-party support. Even though Sega Genesis had third-party support, but it didn't have as much third-party support as the Super Nintendo did. For example, for Konami, they put out 2 Castlevania games on the Super Nintendo, whereas they only put 1 out on the Sega Genesis. And Capcom put out Mega Man X1, X2, X3, and Mega Man 7 for the Super Nintendo. And they only put out Mega Man The Wily Wars for the Sega Genesis. Well, not really for the Sega Genesis, it's for the Sega Mega Drive. It never came out here in the States. It came out there in Europe and Japan. It never came out here in the States, which is pretty much a remake of Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 on the Sega Genesis, pretty much. So, statistically, Super Nintendo won over the Sega Genesis, despite of it coming out a year or two later than the Sega Genesis. But I was more of a Sega fan because I was a big Sega mark back in the day. I liked games like Phantasy Star, Shining Force, Sonic, Altered Beast, Golden Axe, those games. I was a big mark for those games. So I never really said that at all. But my preference is that I like both systems though. I like Sega Genesis because of the Sega games and the Sega RPGs. I like Super Nintendo because it had the Mega Man games, some of the RPGs that I liked, the Final Fantasy Squaresoft ones, the Enix games. I like those games because of that. So I like both. I think both systems make each other better. If Super Nintendo didn't exist, Sega Genesis wouldn't have been as good as it was. If Super Nintendo didn't, then if the Sega Genesis didn't exist, Super Nintendo wouldn't be as good as it was. Or if you think about it, Super Nintendo wouldn't exist at all because if the Sega Genesis would have never came out, pretty much it wouldn't have pushed Super Nintendo to become a 16-bit system. I mean, you had TurboGrafx 16 in there, but really TurboGrafx 16 wasn't really marketed that well, and it wasn't really a big competitor worldwide. You know, TurboGrafx 16 was doing reasonably well in Japan, but it really didn't have an established base here in the States and in Europe. So that's just my video response to that. So, okay, this has been me, Jedite, signing off.